Hello and welcome to Module 4 of INST728E on social media and crisis informatics. In this video, we'll be talking about collecting data from social media. But first, though, at this point, you should have selected a disaster-type event to study for the remainder of this course. Now, this is important because starting in the homework for this module, you're going to be using that event to complete the homework. All right, so for collecting data from social media, there are many different social media platforms that may be of interest. For our purposes, though, we're going to focus on Twitter for the primary part of this course, but we'll also talk about Reddit and Facebook as other data sources. Now, there are two ways to collect data. One is to rely on existing data sets that people have already collected for you, and another is to use the APIs from these platforms to collect data yourself. There are some limitations with both that we'll talk about, but first, for simplicity, we'll start with dataset archives. These archives consist of data sets that people have already collected, which means they've already done a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Now, these data sets generally consist of large JSON files, files that we have seen like the ones in Module 3. In fact, that's from a data set about Ferguson, Missouri that you can find online. Now, some of these data sets contain archives at the monthly or yearly level. So from Reddit's perspective, there is a data set called pushshift.io that's maintained by one Jason Baumgartner. If you go to files.pushshift.io/Reddit, you can see all the Reddit submissions and comments supposedly posted over the life of the Reddit platform. Facebook has relatively few data archives that are publicly available, but you might be able to find some. But the largest archive that we'll talk about is called the Twitter Stream Grab. This is from the Internet Archive team. So if you go to archive.org, that's where the Internet Archive is, which you may have used before for the Wayback Machine or archives of any kind of data from the Internet. They do maintain an archive of Twitter's public sample stream, which we'll talk about later on. This archive goes back to 2011 and contains about 40 gigabytes of data for each month of tweets. So we talked before, there are about 500 million tweets posted to Twitter per day. The archive team maintains an archive of 1% of those tweets in a compressed format. So we're talking 400 gigabytes compressed down to about 40 gigabytes per month. You can find that here, along with numerous other archives as well. The other way, as I mentioned, is to rely on data collection or build your own data collection platform, or rely on APIs from other data collection platforms. Generally, these exist in the form of RESTful APIs, which means they provide JSON output for you. And the typical process for acquiring data from these platforms is to get access to the API or get the API package for whatever platform you're using. So the Facebook SDK package or the PRA package for Reddit or the Tweepy package for Twitter are all examples of these API packages. Or you can roll your own or use the API directly via some browser. Then you register for the API generally, so this means you have to have some sort of user account to access the API. This is true now for Facebook, Reddit, and Twitter, though it didn't used to be the case for Reddit. And then once you've registered, you can get the API keys that are associated with your account. That actually gives you access to the API. And then you can send requests to the API and get data back. So you can get tweets back that contain a particular keyword, or you can get Reddit posts from a particular subreddit, or you can get all the comments from a Facebook page's public page. Now for Facebook, the API process for this assumes that you already have a Facebook account and have access to, or can get access to, the Facebook Developer Suite, which is free. You don't have to sign up for anything for that. But if you go to Facebook's developer toolset, there is a Graph API Explorer, which gives you a nice interface to the Facebook API. So here we have an example that pulls down the BBC's feed from their public page. For Reddit, you have to create a Reddit account and create an application associated with that account that you can give access to. We'll walk you through that. And then for Twitter, you do the same thing. So you have a Twitter account, and you can go to apps.twitter.com and create your own application. Now, each one of these processes provide you some set of credentials. So in the Twitter world, this is a 4-piece set that contains an OAuth token and key, and a consumer token and key. In Reddit, this is a single key and token set. And then in Facebook, this is an access token. All these are generally long strings that identify you or your user as giving access to this particular application. Generally, this is what happens when you use an application on your phone or your computer that is connecting to one of these platforms for you. Whenever you say, I'm giving this application access to my data, this is kind of what's going on in the background. Okay, so for Module 4, I'll walk you through how to collect data from these APIs for Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. The existing dataset archives you can explore on your own. I'll provide you with a collection of data around the event that you are interested in directly, so you don't have to worry about that. Now for this homework, I want you to choose a platform, either Twitter, Reddit, or Facebook, or another platform that you're comfortable with that has an API, like Instagram or 4chan, and use this API to create a small data set of social media posts around whatever your selected event is. So if you're using Twitter or Reddit or Facebook, you can search for a particular event. So you can use Twitter's search API to find tweets related to Boston Marathon bombing or tweets related to the Nepal earthquake or Hurricane Harvey. You should be able to do the same thing for Reddit or Facebook. If you do use another platform, that's fine. Just let me know. And then once you've created this small data set, take your analysis for Module 3 to answer the same questions using this small social media data set that you just created. All right. There are some additional resources you can look at if you want to check out a video on Python and the Reddit API. There's a nice video about that. And then there's another video on Python and Tweepy, which is the Twitter package we'll be using for our data collection. It's a little bit dated, but it's still a relatively decent overview. Okay, so now we can move on to the example for our notebook. So we'll flip over and go to Module 4 on collection. And we'll look at Reddit, Facebook, and Twitter. The first thing we need to do is import the JSON package, because a lot of the content that we'll be using is going to be in the JSON format. And then we'll look at first the Reddit API. The first thing here to include is the Reddit API wrapper called praw, which will give us access to Reddit's API. So go ahead and run that. And now, as I mentioned in the slides, Reddit, Facebook, and the Twitter API all require some credential information in order to access the API. So for Reddit, you can use an existing account or you can create a new account, whichever you want to do. Once you have that account created, you need to go to reddit.com/pref/apps. That will give you a list of the applications that you've authorized to use your account. If you've used Reddit on mobile or Narwhal for Reddit or something like that, they'll be listed here. But if what you want to do is scroll down to the bottom, and there should be a button for Create New App. What you want to do is create that, and it will give you a list of fields to fill out. You need to give it a unique name, leave the web app clicked, and you need to give it some description and a redirect URL. The redirect URL can be anything, as long as it's a valid URL. But for our purposes, you can put in umd.edu. And then scroll down, and once you've created the app, you should see a window that asks or that has an information about the name of the app, your app description, and the web app ID. So this is this short string here under web app. In order to access the secret, you need to click, we'll refresh this, you need to click the edit button, and that'll give you the secret here. And then once you have this client ID and secret string, then you can go into your Reddit cell here where we instantiate the Reddit class of the PRA package. So let's go ahead and pull out our client ID and our secret. Plug those in here. You can leave the user agent as you like. And now we should be connected to the Reddit API, and we can start capturing Reddit posts. So the first thing we want to do, as an example, is look at the World News subreddit and say we'll look at the Reddit API and we'll call the subreddit function on the particular subreddit we've asked for. So this will give us an object that points to this subreddit. And then we'll ask for the 10 newest submissions to this subreddit. And here they are: Turkey to review 11,000 cases, linked to app used by coup suspects, 2018 World Cup Chief Mutko quits, etc. We can print other additional information like votes or posting user or username, these kinds of things. We can also leverage Reddit's voting mechanism. So here we just printed the 10 newest submissions to the World News subreddit. We can also look at the hottest submissions. So this is what Reddit generally shows you. We'll do the same thing with the World News subreddit. We'll target that subreddit. And instead of new with the limit of 10, we'll do hot, and we can do with a limit of 10 or 5. We'll just go 5 here, and then we'll print the title for each of these hot news submissions. So we get Putin, Russia warns U.S. against meddling in presidential election. Germany energy consumer paid to use power over Christmas, supply outstrips demand, and a few others. You can also look at multiple subreddits. So Reddit has a feature called multi-Reddits, where you can look at a single Reddit, or you can look at multiple Reddits combined together with a plus sign. So if you wanted to look at World News plus awe, or maybe you wanted to look at the Donald plus red pill or something like that, you could. And then we'll do the same thing that we did before, where we'll look at the 10 newest submissions to either the World News or awe subreddit. So you see When Your Cat is Bored. Most of these are probably from awe. So how about we do World News and News? So we saw 3 big cities sue DOD, Turkey to review 11,000 cases. So we can mix these together. Now you can also do tab completion, as I have mentioned in the past. So you could do post.author to get author information. So this Turkey to review 11,000 cases was posted by 1.9. 3 big cities sue DOD over gun database was posted by AA Vail. And you can print other information as well. But submissions are only part of Reddit, and the vast majority of Reddit content is actually in Reddit comments. So you can look at the comment tree underneath the submission as well. So here we'll look at World News again, and since there can be many comments, we'll look at just the 5 topmost comments. We'll target the World News subreddit. We'll get just the hottest, or the number 1 submission to this current Reddit, or to this current subreddit. And then for each post in this list of submissions, which should be only 1, we'll print the title, and then we'll set the comment limit to this comment count that we have, and we'll get the list back of these comments, and we'll convert it to a list that we can then iterate through. Now there are 2 kinds of comments you may get back from the PRA API. One is a regular comment object. Another is called a more comments object. What this more comments object means is that there are more comments that you have not yet retrieved. So if we hit a more comments kind of object, then we'll just go ahead and skip over that. But then for each regular comments, then we'll look at this comment name and body and look at a few replies as well. So the comment's name is a unique name that Reddit provides. So this is the unique identifier for this particular comment. And we can look at the body of that comment here. And we see some examples. So this was the title of Russia warns U.S. against meddling. This reads like an Onion headline. Anything politics related has been sounding like an Onion article lately. And we can see these are the top 5 comments, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and their replies. So that's a quick overview for the Reddit API. Now we'll move on to the Facebook API. Now the Facebook API is a little bit different than the Reddit API, both in terms of how you access it and the kind of information it gives you. So Facebook is hyper-vigilant about privacy, so it's very difficult to get data about your friends. So it used to be the case that you could create a Facebook app and then use that to look at your social network and see your friends' comments and such, but that's no longer the case. Now, if you want to use the Facebook API, the best bet that you'll get is to use it to access public pages, so BBC or the White House or CNN or some news organization or political organization that has a public account, or a celebrity with a public account. But to connect to the Facebook API, so first we need to import the Facebook API package, and then we need to access the Graph Explorer to get our access token. So rather than creating an app that we have an agent or an OAuth ID for, like we did with Reddit, we can just go ahead and simply use Facebook's Graph Explorer. So if you visit this developers.facebook.com link that I've highlighted, then you can look at your access token here. So it's going to be a very long string. You can embed that right there. Now note that this access token expires every 15 minutes, so don't expect to be able to use it for very long, but we can use it at least for our example purposes here. So now, once we have this access token, we can instantiate the Graph API, which is what Facebook calls its API, using the access token that we just had, and we'll go with version 2.7. And connect. So now we can use this to pull out posts from public pages. So similar to what we did with Reddit, we can look at a target page. So with Reddit, we did World News. Here we'll use New York Times. And we'll get the 10 most recent posts and the 5 first comments for each post. So to do that, we call getObject using the target page as our ID, and we'll use the feed endpoint. So this means we'll get the comment feed for this page. And what we want to do is look at the first max posts in this, the first max post elements in the data response for this object that we got back. In this case, we'll look at 10, and then we'll print the message and ID for this post along with the comments. So to get the comments, we call graph.getObject again with the ID of this message and the comments endpoint. And then for each one, we'll use the enumerate function to get a number for this comment and then the comment itself. So we can print that. We can put the comment number, who is it from, and that person's name along with that message. So the New York Times, apparently its #1 article right now is Walton Aline Zeriner has found a range of coping mechanisms to deal with memory loss. And here are the top few comments, who they're from and what their content is. So you could mine this for additional information about breaking news and how people are responding to these articles. All right, so that's about all for Facebook, because Facebook makes it not very easy to get data. Okay, now we can look at Twitter. So the first thing we need to do is run the import for the Tweepy package. Now, Twitter is a little bit different in the way it works. So it requires not just that you have an account, but it also requires for you to have a Twitter developer account, which means you have to have a phone number associated with your account. So I have a little bit set of instructions about how you set a phone number. So you go to Twitter, check out your user settings, and then go to mobile, and you can specify your mobile number there. And once you've verified your mobile number, then you can go to Twitter's app site, so apps.twitter.com, and you can create a new application. Now, like with Reddit, you need to have a name and a description and a website. And you can use test.ul.com or umd.edu. That's fine. It doesn't really matter as long as it's a valid URL. And once you have that, you have to agree to the developer agreement and create a new application. And once you create a new app, you need to click the Key and Access Tokens tab, which will get you access to the consumer key and consumer secret, which is only half the number of pieces of data that you need. After that, you need to click the Create My Access Token button, which will give you an access token and an access token secret as well. So these 4 pieces of information that you need. I provided you some credentials here if you can't get this working, but it's best to use your own credentials for accessibility reasons. So Twitter does it's best to use your own credentials here because Twitter is pretty adamant about how many people can use the same credentials simultaneously. So this way, if you have your own credentials, you don't have to worry about somebody using these credentials that I've provided. So once you set the consumer key, secret, access token, and secret, then you can connect to the Twitter API. So we have Tweepy's OAuth handler that uses the consumer key and secret, and then we'll set up the access token with the access token, key, and secret. And then we'll connect to the Twitter API. Now to test our connection, we can pull tweets from our own timeline and look at the top 5 tweets there. So we have Mark Suster said something, and an energy department. This is who are on the HCIL throwaway account that I have put together for this class. And we can look at the tweet author's screen name, the tweet's author's name. So the author's screen name here was M. Suster. The author name is Mark Suster, and the content of his tweet is here. And you can do this for your own timeline. Twitter has a nice search capability, so we can search for keywords. So we have some query string like earthquake. The Tweepy API object that we have here has a function called search that you just put in some query string, and then it'll give you back, in this case, I think it defaults to 10 tweets at first. So we searched for earthquake, and we got 10 tweets back. And here are the screen name and tweet text that we have. So tweets, this one's from Takumi Software, this one is from EMSC, this one's from Jury Lady 5. So you can search for tweets, and then for each tweet you can print out the author screen name and tweet text. Similarly, you can print out additional information, so stuff that we've already seen, so like tweet, author, and name. And we'll see earthquake all 2. This name is in Japanese. Let's see, Takumi Software is also in Japanese. EMSC, all quakes. And you can print out additional information, like how many retweets it has, or how many likes, etc. You can do more complicated queries as well. So say you want to look for tweets that include earthquake, but also have either a link or a photo associated with them. So you can do earthquake that we did before, plus you can do a sub-query here that's filter with media or filter with links. And then everything else will be the same. And we'll see most of these come back with links that you can visit. Now, to get more tweets back, rather than just the 10 that we have, or here in this case the 11, Tweepy has a function called paging and cursors. So for public APIs like this, where you're not paying Twitter anything to use their API, they are very active in terms of rate limiting. They don't want you to be able to look at all possible tweets that have ever been posted, or look at all possible tweets over the past 10 years that mention earthquakes or anything like that, at least not at one time. And you can imagine it would be a lot of stress on Twitter's servers if they said, for every time somebody queries our server, we're going to return all possible tweets. Instead, Twitter does this paging thing where it will return sets of tweets. So similar to if you go to Google and you do a search, Google will give you the top 10 hits, and then you have to scroll down to the bottom and click next to get the next 10. So we do the same kind of thing here. For Tweepy to do this, Tweepy has cursor support. So we see this here. And what it says is use the cursor to take some function, in this case search, with some query string. So we'll use the same query string we had before that looks for all tweets that mention earthquakes and have media or links associated with them. And then we'll take the first 5 and we'll print out the screen name and text for them. Or excuse me, not the first 5. We'll take the first 100. And there is an upper limit to how many you can get this way. But now we have way more tweets than we had before. So Twitter has a lot of search functionality in terms of filtering and date information. So you can look between 2 specific dates, and you can look for that or you can get more information about that at Twitter's API documentation here or at Tweepy's documentation. So if you go to the Twitter API, so there's all kinds of other search functionality as well. And you can look at that here at Twitter's search information or at Twitter's search documentation or the Tweepy docs as well. Now the last thing I'll mention is about Twitter streaming, which is a particularly important area for collecting tweets. So everything that we saw before in terms of search for Twitter is retrospective. It gives you tweets that happened in the past. But say you want to track information as it happens. So you want to look for new instances of earthquakes or new instances of terror attacks that people are talking about online. So in order to do this, we can rely on Twitter's streaming capability. What this means is when we start a stream, or we start listening to the Twitter stream, any new tweet that is published from that point forward, modulo some sampling, will get sent to us. Twitter's public sample API or public sample stream will give us 1% of, or up to 1% of all of Twitter. What this means is you can't search for a very general term like the and expect to get most of Twitter back. Instead, you can search for whatever term you like, and the Twitter streaming API will give you up to 1% of tweets, which is about 4 million tweets per day if you are looking in a particular place or looking for a particular set of keywords or something. So in order to access the Twitter streaming API, we have to connect to it and then listen to it over time. So here I have an example about how this works using the local stream, or using this class that I have created for you called the local stream listener. So the local stream listener is a subclass of the Tweepy stream listener, and what this does is give us like a skeleton of the kinds of things we need to implement for us to access the Twitter stream. So we have this log file that I created so you can record tweets to a file that gets initialized here. And then these next few functions, so on data, on status, on exception, on limit, etc., these are functions that we're overloading or implementing from the stream listener class that we're subclassing here. So the only thing that we're going to do here is say anytime we receive data, we're going to print the current count, number of tweets that we've seen, and then we're going to call our parent stream listener class's on data function with this data. And if we have more tweets than the number that we were looking for, so in this case we're only looking for 10, then we'll go ahead and break out of this stream listening class. Now here in the on status function, this is where we actually handle saving tweets, because there are other messages that you may get back from the Twitter stream API, like a limit or an error that has occurred or a timeout has occurred or something. But for our purposes, we just want to look at these tweets. So we'll increment the number of tweets that we've seen. We'll go ahead and print this tweet's text, and then we'll save it to a file. Or we'll save this tweet's JSON form to a file. So once we have this class set up, you won't have to mess with this class structure if you want to use this. So you may need to increase this max tweet count or remove this counter altogether if you just want to keep streaming data. So we'll go ahead and run this, and then we'll create a new local stream listener and call tweepy.stream using the authorization API that we already have and this instantiated listener. Now, that just creates it, but now we need to tell it how to work or what it needs to follow. So there are a couple of different ways that we can stream data. One is by the filter stream. So this will track new tweets that mention earthquake and disaster. So if we do that, we should get a few new tweets back. You can see them sort of coming in real time. And we see after 10 tweets that it stopped. So that's one way to do it based on tracking tokens. Another way is to track usernames. So say we want to track BBC Breaking News or BBC or the New York Times. Then while here we said filter with the track named argument, here we'll call a filter with the follow named argument. The only caveat is rather than standard screen names, we have to convert these screen names to user IDs. What this means is we have to use the API from Tweepy to get the user for a particular screen name and then get that user's user ID, which is a numeric number or a numeric string that uniquely identifies that user. So then we can see the top few tweets from BBC or the New York Times. And we see these tweets, these are tweets that retweet. We capture retweets here. So this one was this was a New York Times tweet that's retweeted, another New York Times that's retweeted. So most of these are the New York Times or retweets from the Times. We have a retweet from C News, and we get the first 10 of those as well. Now, the last way that you can filter the Twitter stream is with the location named argument that we see here. So before we looked at keywords, then we looked at usernames. Now we can look at specific locations. So here, this is a bounding box around San Francisco. So we saw bounding boxes with the base map class in one of our previous videos. So here we'll create this bounding box array and then set this location to this bounding box array. So we'll look at the first 10 tweets that come in from San Francisco. Now we'll do one additional thing here and call this setlog file to tweetlog.json. And what this will do is any new tweet that comes in will also get saved to a file, this tweetlog.json file, as JSON, which you could use for the homework for this module. And then we'll call the filter function with location set to this bounding box array. And then once that's done, we'll go ahead and close this tweetlogs file. So let's see what happens here. Oh, we didn't import codecs. So we'll just call open. And we start to see a couple of tweets come in from the Bay Area. All right, so we collected 10 of those, and now if you hop over here to your notebooks list or wherever your notebook is, then we see this new tweetlog.json file has been collected, so you can click on that, and here's a bunch of JSON data about these tweets that we just collected. All right, well, that's it for the collection APIs. So I hope this was interesting. If you have any questions, and as always, feel free to post on Slack. For the homework now for Module 4, essentially what I want you to do is, as I've mentioned, download this Homework 4 module notebook, choose one of the APIs or a different API that we've seen, and connect to it here. Then search that platform for some keywords related to the event you selected. Then for each one of those, for each one of the 5 keywords that you selected, I want you to use the matplotlib package to graph the number of messages for each one. So a nice bar graph here would be good that says, well, for earthquake we got 1,000 or 10 or however many. For Nepal we got 20 or something like that. If you're using Tweepy, you should probably use the cursor capability here. And now for each one of these sets of messages that you found, so for each message that contains the word, so say one of your keywords was earthquake, look at all the words or all the messages that contain earthquake and find what the most frequent tokens are in that set of messages. And the same thing for the next keywords you chose for your event, and so on. And then finally look at the most frequent authors for that event as well. All right, and good luck.